All right, so on this retake, we are going to do the 3 different levels of problems that there were in level 1. So the first level here, this first set of boxes, is already factored for us. We know that because it's already in parentheses and it already equals 0. So those are 2 good things. Whenever it's like this, I can take each parenthesis, set them equal to 0, and solve. So in this case, each factor, 5x minus 9, equals 0. This first parenthesis right here set it equal to 0. And 2x plus 6 equals 0. So I set each factor, each of these parentheses, equal to 0. And now I'm just going to solve it like normal. I'm going to plus 9. Always add or subtract anything you can first. These will cancel, negative 9 and positive 9. Over here, 0 plus 9 gives me 9. Divide out the 5 to get rid of this. And that is a fraction or a decimal. I like to leave my answers as fractions when they don't turn out to be whole numbers, but decimals are also acceptable as long as they are pretty decimals. Over here on this side, I'm going to do the similar thing. The opposite of plus 6 this time is going to be minus 6. So now I have 2x equals negative 6. Divide out the 2. And in this case, this is going to be a whole number. Negative 6 divided by 2 gives us negative 3. And now you're ready to go ahead and pause this video and try the one on the side next to it. For level 2, you can tell is not factored yet. They do equal 0, which is a good sign, but the left side is not in parentheses, so we need to factor this. So I'm going to multiply the first number times the last number. In this case, 2 times 6 gives us 12. So in our little X game on Delta Math, multiplies to 12, but adds to 7. I could write out a factor chart if I needed to, but this would be 3 and 4. So I am going to split the middle. I'm going to do 3x and 4x, both of them positive. I'm going to bring down the 2x squared. I'm going to bring down the plus 6. And now that I have 4 terms, I'm going to factor by grouping. I'm going to cut this in half right here, and I'm going to find the GCF between these guys. Between 2 and 3, the biggest thing that they're both divisible by is 1. And they both have an x, so 1x. When I do that division, 2 divided by 1 gives me 2. X squared divided by x, so if I have 2 x's and I get rid of an x, I have an x left over. Positive 3 divided by 1 makes positive 3. If I have an x and I get rid of an x, there aren't any x's left over. And normally when we do factoring problems, one has an x and one doesn't. The 1x that we divided by is going to go on the outside. I'm going to do the same thing over here. These guys are both divisible by 2. And it's going to be a positive 2 because the sign in the middle is positive. If it was negative, it would be a negative 2. They do not both have an x, so no x. When I do my division, 4x divided by 2 gives me 2x. Positive 6 divided by 2 gives me positive 3, with a positive 2 as the GCF. Double check to make sure that I've done it correct so far. My parentheses match. So 1x plus 2, or just x plus 2, you don't have to have the 1 in front, for my GCFs, and then 2x plus 3 equals 0. So here it is factored. And if you're looking at this now, it looks like step 1, where it's already factored. So I'm going to set each of my factors equal to 0. So I'm going to say 1x plus 2 equals 0. 2x plus 3 equals 0. And then we're going to solve. Minus 2 from both sides. I'm going to pretend the 1 isn't there because you are allowed to do that. X equals negative 2 is my answer on this side. On this side, minus 3 on both sides. I am not allowed to pretend that 2's are not there. I'm going to have to divide both sides by 2. And I get x equals negative 3 halves. Or negative 1.5, but I like fractions as answers. So somewhere where I have room, I'm going to draw my squiggle brackets. Negative 2 and negative 3 over 2 are my answers. And now go ahead and try the one over here on the left. For the last one, this guy, we're going to do some things first. It's not factored, and what's more, this one does not equal 0, and it needs to equal 0 before I can do anything. So I need to add 10x to both sides, because that will make this cancel. Now, since this has an x, I need to line it up with the thing that has an x. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this guy too. The opposite of minus 2 is plus 2. So I'm going to plus 2 on both sides. So everything over here canceled. Now it equals 0. That's good. X squared comes down because nothing was in front of that. Negative 14 plus 10 makes negative 4x. Negative 62 plus 2 makes negative 60. And so the same way that the last ones worked, where up here we did all this work and said, hey, now it looks like step 1. We did this first step, and now it looks like step 2, where it's not factored yet, but it does equal 0. So now let's factor. I'm going to multiply the first number times the last number. Don't forget, if there isn't a number out front, it's 1. So I need to think of a number that multiplies to negative 60, but if I add them together, I get negative 4. Draw out the factor chart if you do not know them, but it's going to be negative 10 and positive 6. So I'm going to split this into negative 10x and positive 6. Bring down my minus 60, bring down my 1x squared, and then factor by grouping. Out of the first half, they're both divisible by 1, and they both have an x. When I do that division, 1 divided by 1 gives me 1. X squared divided by x gives me an x left over. Negative 10 divided by 1 makes negative 10. If I have an x and get rid of an x, nothing is left. Put my parentheses with the 1x out in front. Over here, these guys are both divisible by 6. Positive 6, because this is positive. If that sign right there was a negative, I would do minus 6, or negative 6 on both. When I do that, I get 1x minus 10 for all this division, with a positive 6 as the GCF. The parentheses match, which is good. And I'm going to drop my 1s here. 1x plus 6. You're welcome to leave the 1s in, but you don't have to. And then x minus 10 equals 0. And now it is factored. And the nice thing about it being factored is that there's only one more step. All I need to do is take each of these parentheses, set them equal to 0, and solve. So x plus 6 equals 0. X minus 10 equals 0, right? Both of the parentheses equal to 0, and let's solve it. The opposite of plus 6 is minus 6, and I get x equals negative 6. With nothing out in front, a 1 out in front, but 1s are allowed to disappear. Over here, I can plus 10 on both sides, and I get x equals 10. And so I'm going to draw my squiggle brackets. Negative 6 and positive 10 would be my answers. And go ahead and try the last problem and turn it in when you're finished.